Since Kyle Shanahan became the head coach for the San Francisco 49ers in 2017, this has been one of the most successful teams in the NFL. They've made 4 NFC championship games, they've won 2 of them, but this is a team that has been unable to win the big game in 2 Super Bowl appearances. And this is a team that is aging rapidly, and they've got a lot of question marks entering the 2026 NFL season. And in today's video, we're going to talk about if the 49ers can win the Super Bowl this year or if their Super Bowl window is closed. I'm excited to talk about this. This has been one that I have been excited to do all summer long, but I'd love to hear from you guys down in the comments section. Do you guys think I'm too high or too low on the 49ers? And be sure to hit that like button as a football animation will appear when you do so. It really helps get this video out to more 49ers fans like yourselves. But let's go ahead. Let's kick this off and start the same way that we start all of these videos by talking about the coaching staff and Kyle Shanahan. Now, I'm not going to spend as much time on Kyle Shanahan in this video as I would other coaches because it feels like we've talked about Kyle Shanahan in every one of these team previews so far because it feels like every team in the NFL is running the Shanahan offense. Kyle Shanahan has completely revolutionized the way offenses are called in the NFL, and he's done a fantastic job of just continuing to have offensive success even when they might not have the most talent. They were second in offensive DVOA in 2025. He's a brilliant offensive play caller who has done a really fantastic job of marrying the run game and the pass game, the wide zone rushing, getting these athletic offensive linemen that can get on the move, open up these rushing lanes, utilizing more 12 and 21 personnel, which they ranked towards the bottom of the league last year in terms of 12 personnel. They were 26th, but in terms of 21 personnel playing with that fullback, this team was first. They played 36% of their snaps from a 21 personnel look. I think that he is a really, really good offensive play caller, and I also think he's a good leader. You just look at the way that they have been able to rally around him as the head coach, even when there have been so much injuries. They have been able to get the most out of this group. So there's so many positive things I could say about Kyle Shanahan, and I'll just leave it at, look, he's a really good head coach, but he's got to win. He has to win here, and I don't think his job is in jeopardy because I think he has been so successful and he's built up enough of a kind of a leash here with the front office, but they have to get it done. They have to win a Super Bowl. And as we'll talk about, I think it's only going to get harder from here. His offensive coordinator is Klay Kubiak. These two families have kind of been intertwined together for so many years. Klay Kubiak going to be just the pseudo-offensive coordinator here. It's Kyle Shanahan that'll be the play caller. But don't be surprised if this 49ers offense continues to have success, if Klay Kubiak gets poached as another head coach candidate somewhere else. On the defensive side of the ball, this is the most fascinating unit to me. You lose Robert Saleh again, and they bring in Raheem Morris, which I'm fascinated to see what he's going to be able to bring because those Atlanta Falcons defenses, they weren't great, but Raheem Morris, I think, is a really good defensive-minded coach. He had a lot of success with the Rams when he was their defensive coordinator. It's what got him the head coaching gig in Atlanta. And look, I think that he's going to be it's going to be fascinating to see what he does because he has this very versatile defensive scheme that they'll blend the 3-4, they'll blend a whole bunch. You'll see some 5-man looks, you'll see a bunch of diverse coverages, positional versatility. They're just a very multiple defense, but what I am fascinated to see with this team, if this team tries to do, I'm really curious to see what the blitz rates are going to look like here for the NFL, or for the 49ers, I should say, because last year, this was a Falcons defense that was second in the NFL in blitz rate. They blitzed almost 34% of the time. They brought a bunch of different blitz looks. Maybe some of that was some of the other things that they had going on, and they just didn't have the pass rushers to do it. The 49ers ranked towards the bottom of the league in blitz rate. That's not something that Robert Saleh typically wants to bring. So with Raheem Morris and some of these athletes that they have at the linebacker position, whether it be a Nick Martin or some of the other guys that they have tried to draft and develop, I think that this team could really blitz. They're going to bring some unique coverages, but that's the area defensively that I'm most fascinated with. And this is a good coaching staff. I think it's one of the best in the league. You could argue it's the best in the league because Kyle Shanahan is such a force multiplier for everything else. But I don't have a lot of questions about the coaching staff, but the roster I do have some question marks around. And that's where we're going to start. We'll start on the offensive side of the ball, as always, and talk about Brock Purdy, who I don't have a lot of question marks around Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy has really turned his career into one of the best success stories in NFL history. Obviously, early on in his career, like he comes in 2022, carries this team to the NFC Championship game as the third string quarterback after Trey Lance and I believe Jimmy Garoppolo go down. And he steps in valiantly, and he's so good that they're like, you know what? We're going to trade the guy that we moved multiple draft picks for and make him the starting quarterback. And he's been awesome since he got here. I think he is one of these, like, he doesn't have a crazy arm. He isn't this crazy athlete. He is very much of that game manager type of quarterback. And I think when people hear the term game manager, especially when it comes to these 49ers quarterbacks, they think, oh, you must think that this player sucks. That's not it at all. I actually think Brock Purdy's a very good quarterback. I think he's probably in that 11 to 16 range of quarterbacks. He's definitely a top half of the league quarterback. But is he elevating your offense to unseen heights? Probably not. With that being said, I don't think this offense works without Brock Purdy because I think he does a great job of recognizing throwing windows, throwing into anticipation, making really good reads. I think he's a high-level processor because he has to be, because he's not this elite athlete. The area that I think you want to see him get a little bit better in, accuracy, he's gotten more and more accurate, it feels like, each and every year of his career. The area that I do want to see him get a little bit more consistent in is just taking care of the football. He's got 41 interceptions in his career. He's thrown double-digit interceptions each of the last 3 years. And I think that's the one thing missing from his game is, can he fix the turnover problem? He threw 3 interceptions in the playoffs and ultimately ended up costing them in the divisional round against Seattle, among other things. But look, I think Brock Purdy's a really good quarterback. He is a high-level processor. He most of the time takes care of the football, and he's really accurate. And we've seen you can get to the Super Bowl with Brock Purdy as your quarterback, and I still think that he's got room to continue to grow, especially if he can fix the turnovers. But they might have the best backup quarterback in the league right now in Mac Jones, who a lot of people thought they might be able to trade for like a second or a third round pick. They opt to hold on to Mac Jones. Really, over the last 2 years, I think Mac Jones has kind of revitalized his career. Mac Jones had to start a handful of games for this team last year once Brock Purdy went down with injury. And look, very similar quarterback. He is a game manager type of guy. He doesn't have a crazy arm, but he is a really accurate quarterback. He takes pretty good care of the football. And I think you feel awesome that Max Jones is just the backup quarterback in this room. You've got Adrian Martinez. You've got Curtis Rourke here as well. But this is Brock Purdy's team. And I do think if he was to get hurt, like Mac Jones could step in and give this team perfectly good quarterback play. But now we're going to start to get into some question marks with this room. And it starts with the running game and Christian McCaffrey, who, look, McCaffrey had a good year in 2025, had a 1,200-yard season. He had 10 touchdowns, but he is, I think, pretty due for regression at this point. He had the lowest yards per attempt of his career last year at 3.8 yards. He had 337 carries, 10 touchdowns. I think the big thing is this guy's going to be 30. He's just turned 30 years old. And he's still one of the best receiving backs in the league, but this guy had a ridiculous amount of touches on him last year. Had 113 receptions, had 337 carries. This guy touched the ball 450 times last year for the 49ers, and he was able to stay healthy, but that's been a big question mark with McCaffrey really throughout his entire career. And I think when you look at it, it's clear that he's slowing down. He had the lowest, or I guess one of the lowest yards after contact per attempt of his career in a fully healthy season at 2.75 yards. You saw a lot of regression from him in terms of the speed. His longest run was just 41 yards on the season. Yards, like we talked about, yards after contact per attempt. The missed tackles forced were low at just 50. He is a guy that I think is pretty clearly regressing and had some big games in there. And I still think he's going to be an asset for this team. But I think expecting him to have 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns again, I just don't think it's going to happen for a 30-year-old Christian McCaffrey that has almost 2,000 carries on him. He's been an incredible running back. There's so much to love about what he can do, but he's regressing. And this team, I don't think, has done a very good job of building out this running back room. You drafted Jordan James last year, who is a fine depth RB3 probably. He had just 6 carries for 28 yards. I do think he's a powerful runner. We're going to see that from him, but I don't love that. This team drafted Kalen Black in the 3rd round, which was legitimately one of the worst draft picks that I've seen. And I liked Kalen Black, but not in the 3rd round. And I thought there were better running backs available. Patient runner, very similar to Jordan James, but I liked Jordan James better as a prospect. You have Isaac Garindo, who can't stay healthy, but is a really good athlete. They don't have a good RB2, in my opinion. You've got good RB3s, but if McCaffrey goes down, I don't love this depth. And I do think McCaffrey is going to struggle to stay healthy and produce at the same level. So that's where the first question mark with this offense comes in. The second question mark is going to be with this receiving group, because we'll talk about some of the moves that they made. There are a lot of question marks around health and age in this receiving room. And when you talk about health being a question mark that you have, well, we'll start with Ricky Pearsall, who just has not been able to stay healthy. I like Ricky Pearsall. I think he's a good NFL receiver. He's got size. He's got speed. I think he's got phenomenal hands. This guy doesn't drop the ball. He's got 2 drops for an under 3% drop rate. He is a really good contested catch weapon on 20 contested catch targets in his career so far. He has brought down 70% of those. He is a solid route runner. Like, there's so much to like about what he can do. He just hasn't been able to stay on the field. As a rookie in 2024, he obviously dealt with the kind of recovering from the gunshot wound that he had early on in the season, and ended up coming on late at a pretty big game, week 17 against Detroit, where that was kind of like, okay, Ricky Pearsall is here. 2025 started the season off pretty good, looked really good against Seattle, looked really good against Arizona. He gets hurt again. They bring him back, and the production just falls off a cliff. He's got to stay healthy. He was an older prospect coming out of Florida to begin with, and if he can't stay healthy, I don't really love the rest of this group. Now, they did go make some big moves. Like they signed Mike Evans in free agency, which is so strange to me that he will not be in Tampa Bay. Mike Evans is another Mike Evans is one of the best receivers over the last decade, in my opinion. He's not this superstar athlete. He has 4.5 speed, but he's a really good route runner. He separates. He wins tough catches at the top of his routes, a 55% career contested catch rate. He separates pretty well, and he's just been a reliable weapon every time he's been on the field. But he'll be 33 years old here in about a month. He has never really been this great athlete, and he's another player that has started to rack up injuries. 2025, he missed a good amount of the season due to injuries. 2024, he was healthy, but he missed a 3 or 4 game stretch due to injuries. That's 2 more players on this team that you have major injury concerns with. I think Mike Evans is going to be fine here, but I think relying on him as a number 1, that's tough. That's a tough sell for me. The rest of this team, you bring in Christian Kirk, who is a fine wide receiver 3. I thought I had a pretty decent year in Houston last year. Kind of as that rotational guy. Had some big moments, was really good in the wild card game where he had 140 yards for this team. He is I think just a slot weapon for this team. That's kind of been where he's played a majority of his snaps. we'll see what he can provide to this team. He's another guy that has kind of just been a depth piece. He was really good that year, 2022 in Jacksonville. Injuries kind of racked up for him. Didn't see the field a lot for Houston this year, but when he saw the field, I thought he was fine. And then you've got a bunch of these kind of developmental receivers that they have. Dejon Stribling was their second round pick. I thought this was an overdraft, but Stribling has tools. I think he's got pretty good vertical speed. He's a physical weapon. Very similar play to Ricky Pearsall, but he's not a very good route runner, is ultimately what it comes down to. I think he's probably going to be your like Jawan Jennings replacement because he's an awesome blocker. He can create separation vertically, but he is not a great route runner and won't do much across the middle of the field. Jordan Watkins was drafted from Ole Miss in the 4th round last year because of his speed. Jacob Cowing, very similar type of guy, just a speedy type of guy. If there's a guy that I'm kind of looking at to like produce here outside of Stribling, Pearsall, Kirk, Demarcus Robinson is still here, and he played okay for this team down the stretch, had a good performance in the wild card matchup. He's fine, wide receiver depth, but as you can see, this is not a great wide receiver room. And if there are injuries to Pearsall or Evans, which, I mean, unfortunately, you kind of have to assume that there will be, I don't think that this group has a lot of like high upside players. The tight end room, you feel it's tough because George Kittle ends up getting hurt towards the end of the season, and we'll see what he can provide to this team. Like, it looks like there's a chance. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, there was a video that came of him lifting weights recently, but he tore his Achilles in the wild card game against Philly, which is just absolutely brutal. I don't think he'll be ready for week 1 of the season, which, again, sucks for this team because George Kittle is basically this team's number 1 receiver. Him and Christian McCaffrey are their best receiving weapons right now. Kittle was really good last year. He was a guy that, again, you guessed it, he missed time due to injury last year, but he's one of the best blocking tight ends in football. He's a really good after the catch. He's physical, but he's going to be 33 years old in October, and just the hits and the physical nature that he plays with, you have to imagine that the injuries and the physicality will catch up to him at some point. And again, I don't really like the rest of this group I thought they should have drafted a tight end or really prioritized getting younger at the tight end position. You've got Jake Tonjes, who played well last year, had a career year, 366 yards, good receiving option as like a blocker. He's a fine blocker, better as a run blocker, but nothing spectacular there. You've got Luke Farrell as well, who is going to do some of the same things, more of a blocking type. But this team wants to play kind of 21 personnel with Kyle Juszczyk on the field. Luke Farrell, he came from Jacksonville. He is an okay run blocker for you as well. As a receiver, he isn't going to provide too much to the table. This team, to me, just doesn't have great tight end depth. And if George Kittle misses time, which he probably will miss, I would guess the first few weeks of the season, yeah, you start to see where this offense, to me, there are a lot of question marks around just the age and the upside of this group. Now, the offensive line is where I think we can get a little bit more positive with this group. But you do have to start to ask the question around Trent Williams. How much longer is Trent Williams going to be able to do it? I mean, one of the best offensive linemen in the history of the sport. I mean, he has been absolutely fantastic in all phases throughout his career. As a run blocker, he's one of the best athletes with that 4.8 speed, the way he's able to really be weaponized on this wide zone rushing that they do. He's awesome as a run blocker. As a pass blocker, he's really good. He probably had the worst year of his career, I would say, since his rookie season in terms of pass blocking. He allowed 40 pressures and 4 sacks. There were up and downs for him in Washington, but he'll be 38 years old next month. He's not really shown any signs of slowing down as a run blocker, but you have to start to ask the question, like, all right, how much longer can Trent Williams actually be this elite player? And then on the right side of this team, the right tackle, You've got Colton McKivitz, who has really broken out, I think, had a really good season in 2025. He's gotten incrementally better as a pass protector. He's never really been awesome as a pass blocker, but as a run blocker, he was awesome. He's a pretty solid athlete. He's a little undersized, which I do think leads to some of the lapses that he has in pass protection, but he's a really good run blocker for this team. He gets out in space, he plays with nastiness, and he had the best season of his career in 2025. So you feel pretty good about that. The interior of this offensive line, I think, is mostly good. There's some potential for upside. Connor Colby ended up starting for this team as a 7th-round pick last year, ended up starting a handful of games. He's slated to be the starter. Was not very good for this team, I would say. He struggled mightily as a pass protector. 281 pass blocking snaps, allowed 20 pressures, 3 sacks. Wasn't awesome. As a run blocker, was fine, but I do think that he's probably a guy that will be in a position battle. We'll talk about that here in a second. Jake Brendel is another player that I think is a fine center. Nothing that's moving the needle for you. He'll take his losses in pass protection, but doesn't allow many sacks. He's allowed just 4 sacks on his career. And he's a fine, run blocker. He's, I think, a perfectly baseline, middle-of-the-road starting center. And then at right guard, you've got Dominic Puny, who's a really interesting player. He was really good as a rookie a couple of years ago and ended up kind of taking a step back in 2025. The pass rush or the pass protection was a little bit worse. Wasn't as efficient as a run blocker. I'm not really worried about Dominic Puny. I think he's going to be fine. Was a player I really liked coming out of Kansas. I think you feel pretty good about him starting on this line. They do have really fascinating depth. We mentioned Connor Colby potentially being in a position battle. Carver Willis is the guy that I really have penciled in. I loved this player coming out of Washington. I think he run blocks. I think he's a pretty good pass protector. I think there's upside there with him. They bring in Robert Jones as a depth guard piece. They draft Enrique Cruz in the 5th round, who I think can play. You've got Austin Pleasant as a swing tackle with Verdarian Lowe. They've got good depth offensive line pieces, I would say. And yeah, this offense is really fascinating. Yes, you've got players that I think are really talented players. Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Mike Evans, Ricky Pearsall, Trent Williams. But can you rely on these guys? And when is regression going to start hitting? Is this team going to be able to stay afloat? We're going to have to find out. And it's going to be a really big year to answer a lot of those questions. But let's talk about this defense, which was really bad last year. And Robert Saleh did a good job with the tools that he had. This team ranked 26th in defensive DVOA, 26th against the pass, 25th against the run. And there were a lot of reasons for that. I think the biggest is you're missing your best 3 players on the defensive side of the ball for, it felt like, most of the season. Nickbosa will be healthy entering the year. He's recovering from his 2nd ACL injury, I believe. So that's a little bit concerning. He looked really good to start the season. He had 10 pressures, 2 sacks in the first 3 weeks. And obviously he gets hurt, and the rest is history. Nick Bosa, I don't want to Nick Bosa is one of the best pass rushers in the league, but you do have to start asking the question about his health. This is another guy that has started to just rack up injuries. When he's healthy, he's disruptive and dynamic, one of the most impressive power rushers. He's got the ability to win in a number of ways. He's a solid run defender. There's a lot to like about what Nick Bosa brings to the table, but he's got to be healthy for this team. And if he's not, this team does not have a good pass rush. And Mykel Williams is the other player that this team does have on the edge. Mykel Williams was not good as a pass rusher as a rookie. In 245 pass rushing snaps, he had just 19 pressures and 1 sack on the season, and really, really struggled to create pressure consistently. That's going to be a big question mark for me going into the year is, can Mykel Williams develop as a pass rusher? Because I wasn't the highest on Mykel Williams to begin with when this team drafted him, because I didn't really see a high upside pass rusher. Yeah, he's a pretty good athlete. He's got crazy power. He is a guy that I think is a really good run defender, and we saw that from Mykel Williams. But this team needed a Batman or a Robin pass rusher, and he had an under 7% pressure rate. So that's your other starter. And if Bosa's healthy and Mykel's healthy, great. I love that duo. But I do worry about, like, all right, like if Nick Bosa misses time, do they have another guy that they can go to? This team traded for Keon White, and I think he's an interesting player. Didn't really fit this scheme that the Patriots were running. He came to San Francisco, was fine. I don't think he was anything spectacular, but he looked a lot more like he did early on in New England, where I think he's a guy that gives you versatility to play inside and outside. He's going to be a really fun player for Raheem Morris and kind of those unique looks that he provides. He's not a really great athlete, but I do like him as a depth piece here. They drafted Romello Height in the 3rd round, which I think is a really good Bryce Huff replacement. If you're looking for a guy that can just be a dangerous speed rusher, I think he could absolutely develop into that role. Undersized, not very good against the run, but I think he is a pretty good player. They bring in Cam Sample, who's kind of been a bust for the Cincinnati Bengals as kind of an athletic, developmental edge rusher. Yet, I don't really love this edge group outside of Bosa. And Mykel Williams is a great run defender. But they've got a lot of question marks with me on the rest of this group. And the interior is where I feel a lot better about this team. And I do think that this interior can be pretty good because they made a couple of moves that I absolutely loved. Osa Odighizuwa was a player that this team brings in. I love this move for this team because they needed more speed, explosiveness, and can you just create pressure more consistently? You're going to get it from Osa Odighizuwa, who's been one of the better pass rushing interior defensive linemen, like true 3-techs in the league. He had a really good year in 2023 where he had a 15% win rate. 2024, he had a 12%. This year, he had about a 10%, which is not like an incredible number, but a guy that is absolutely worth going to trade a 3rd round pick for because he's 6'2", he's 280, he's a good athlete, he creates pressure, and even if he doesn't rack up a lot of sacks, he gets in the backfield. I thought he was better this year as a run defender, but he's not a great run defender. That's part of why Dallas's run defense has been as bad as it has been. But I think he's a good player to add to this defense, and I do think he's going to be able to give them some upside. And then you talk about some of the guys that this team has drafted and has some potential to really take that next step. Alfred Collins as a rookie was pretty terrible for this team. He did not play a ton. He's not much of a pass rushing threat. Good, theoretically should be a good run defender, but he missed 20% of his tackles last year. We'll see what Alfred Collins can do in year 2. You still have CJ West here, who I really liked at this draft pick out of Indiana. Another guy that he missed 10% of his tackles, wasn't awesome, but those two guys take up size and hopefully should be better against the run. You draft Grayson Holton in the 1st round, who's very similar to me to Osa Odighizuwa as a guy that is explosive. I think he's more powerful and better against the run, but a really good run or a good pass rusher with some really good explosiveness. Evan Anderson is a player that I really liked as a rookie. I thought he looked pretty good as a nose tackle. He didn't play much, was an undrafted pickup out of Florida Atlantic. And they've got some undrafted types here as well. It's a good interior group with upside. I think Osa Odighizuwa raises the floor. Alfred Collins can raise the ceiling if this can really hit. And I'm fascinated to see what they can do here. But at the linebacker position, this is another thing that I worry about. Fred Warner, he ended up getting hurt early in the season for this team. And we know how incredible Fred Warner is as a player. When he goes down in week 6 against Tampa, pretty much the entire season crumbles in on itself. He's probably the best. You could argue Fred Warner is the best non-quarterback, non-pass rusher in the league, and he has been over the last 5 years. I think the gap between Fred and the next best linebacker is probably the biggest in the league. what he provides in coverage, run defense, the run diagnostics. He's not a great athlete, but he's smart. He is rangy in coverage, and he just flies around and can make plays. He was awesome and has played at a defensive player of the year caliber each of the last 3 years. He gets hurt week 6, and it was a big part of the reason why this defense started to, like I say, crumble in on itself. You're getting him back, and that's huge. This is where I do want to kind of take a second to just talk about how poor the 49ers have drafted, because, I mean, a lot of the guys that they're relying on, they will hit on these late guys, but they've missed on so many prospects. Mykel Williams looks like that could be a miss if he doesn't develop as a pass rusher. You look at some other, like Ricky Pearsall could be a miss for this team if he doesn't develop or stay healthy. There's so many. Alfred Collins did not look good as a rookie. Like, there are so many pieces on this team, and just the overdrafts. Nick Martin is on this team. I don't know why they drafted him in the 3rd round. This was a guy that was a pretty egregious pick at the time. We didn't see a lot of him last year. He played in 15 snaps, and I guess he had 4 tackles, but that's about it for him. He's an athlete, but not a guy that I think is anywhere close to being able to play. They draft Jaden Duggar in the 5th round at the linebacker position. I liked him. You still have Tatum Bethune, who had to end up playing more last year than I think they wanted him to. And he was not good. He missed 16% of his tackles. He's really bad in coverage. Because of the bad draft picks, they had to go spend some more money to bring back Dre Greenlaw. Dre Greenlaw is fascinating. Had a decent year in Denver. I just don't think they wanted to pay him. Good coverage player, good run defender. Like, there wasn't a lot of issues there for him. He's dealt with injuries. That's kind of been the big thing with him over the last couple of years. He just hasn't been able to stay on the field and stay healthy. But there's familiarity here with this scheme, and I think Dre Greenlaw will be fine. But the reason I bring up the bad drafting is they kind of have to keep trying to correct their mistakes, and I think it has hindered them from really being able to build out depth on this team. They don't have a lot of great depth at receiver. They don't have depth at tight end. The running back room is weak. They don't have great edge depth. And I think when they go to the injuries, you've seen some pretty bad moments from this team. I think the linebacker room will be better this year. You've got Greenlaw back, and I think that elevates the floor. I do like Duggar as a developmental linebacker, though. I think he's fascinating. But let's finish this out. Let's talk about the secondary, where this is another group that I think it's a fine group. I don't think it's necessarily one that is elevating this team to new heights. Renardo Green was pretty interesting as a rookie. You saw the ball skills. He was a lot less penalized and looked pretty good. Year 2, in some ways he was better. In some ways he was worse. Was more efficient as a run defender and as a tackler. The coverage consistency was better. He allowed just 52% when targeted, allowed less yards. But he still gave up some pretty big plays, and you didn't have the same ball production, got penalized a little bit more, had some pretty bad moments. I liked him coming out of Florida State, was never the spectacular athlete or anything like that, but a good player to kind of start off this secondary. Diamador Lenore is another player on this team that I do like. I think he's probably this team's best corner. He's a really interesting player. Got a big contract a couple of years ago as a slot. And this year they kicked him outside. And I think he probably had the worst season of his career. He's really good at like just being around the ball. He's a good run defender. That's where you want to see Diamador Lenore. They kicked him outside. The ball production was worse. He still allowed 65% when targeted, got penalized 10 times last year. He's a good corner. I would prefer him in the slot, but the reason that they moved him outside is because Upton Stout was their slot corner, and he was pretty good as a rookie. Was aggressive, physical against the run, made some good plays downhill, which I think this team really liked to see. Still gave up a lot in coverage, did not have great ball production. That's kind of the thing. They don't have a lot of ball production in this secondary. You look at some depth pieces here in the cornerback room. Jack Jones comes over from Miami. That's fine. You draft Ephesians Prysock in the 4th round. He's got size, length, and athleticism. Nate Hobbs comes in. He was Not great for Green Bay last year. Eli Apple is here as a depth piece as well. It's not great. And then the safety room is another fascinating one. Malik Mustafa is a player that I think that they had penciled in to kind of be the replacement for Talanoa Ufunga. Malik Mustafa is a good player. Like, he's physical. He hits really hard. I don't think is the most balanced coverage defender. Doesn't have awesome ball skills, but he's a really good, like, strong safety playing around the ball. That's where I think he's at his best because he's so physical. But because he plays so physical, he gets hurt. And that's an area that he has struggled. Jair Brown is also here as another, like, safety option that both of these guys will rotate and do a bunch of different stuff in coverage. I don't think Jair Brown's anything spectacular. Again, doesn't have great ball skills. Pretty decent against the run, and as a box, he's got bigger size, but not a great athlete. The safety room's good. It's not spectacular. They bring in Marcus Siegel last year in the 5th round here, who's got athleticism. Ashton Davis comes over from the Dolphins. They pick up Jalen Stroman from Notre Dame as a UDFA. And yeah, this Niners team is fascinating as we kind of put a bow on this whole conversation. I think that this roster has such a high floor because of the coaching, because I do think that they've got enough playmakers and the pieces to ideally be like, you know, good, like a good team. Like, I think that that's in there for them. We know that this team seems to always overperform given expectations because of, again, how good the coaching is and all of that. I think that you can talk about that a lot. But the schedule is brutal. I think they are the 3rd best team in their division, at least. And they get the AFC West, which is a really tough division, and you get the NFC East. We look through the schedule, like, I don't think they're going to beat the Rams. They might go, I'd say they can beat the Cardinals twice. You can probably beat the Rams or Seahawks once and then lose to the other two. So let's just say that this team goes 3-3 in the division. You can beat Miami. That's a 4th win. I think you can beat Washington. That's a 5th win. Atlanta can be a win. That's 6th. The Raiders, the Cowboys, the Vikings, the Giants, the Chiefs, the Eagles. This team, like I said, I think they're going to be a playoff team. They'll win 10. I think this team probably goes 10-7 this year. Last year, I think they were 11-6, if I'm not mistaken. And they went 12-5 last year. I think this year is probably a little bit of a regression from that. I think that they probably go 10-7. They're probably a wild card team, but I don't think that this team is a contender in the NFC. I think that there are so many teams that are better than them, 2 of which are in their division. I think you look at other teams like Philly. I think they're in the mix. I think Detroit, Chicago, Green Bay. I worry about the San Francisco's team, and I think they go 10-7 on the year. But I'd love to hear from you guys, 49ers fans. A little bit of an interesting team to talk about. A lot of question marks, but love to hear from you guys. If you guys think I'm too high or too low, leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.